Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. So I saw something on the road today that gave me a bad vibe about a past experience. Just bad luck, superstition. What had happened was my dad used to drive a Mazda Tribute. It was green, and he bought it in 2001, and only a few months after he bought the car, 9/11 happened. And so earlier today I was on the road and I saw a green Mazda Tribute, probably 2001, at least around that time frame. And it instantly brought back memories of 9/11. I've talked about flashbulb memories I had around 9/11. And then it hit, I tried to remind myself that it would have happened whether or not my dad had bought the Mazda Tribute. They're not related events, and to just try to mourn what had happened. But then I realized it's not guaranteed, at least 100%, right, that had my dad not bought that Tribute, that 9/11 would have happened. Right? It's pretty close to 100%, but I don't think we could say it's 100%. So let me give you a scenario where it might not be, right? So for example, we all know that people are very interconnected, or we're only 6 degrees of separation away from, I think Kevin Bacon is the most famous person that this is used for. So imagine the TSA agent who missed the plan, or the people who missed the plan were connected to that car dealership, and the fact that my dad didn't buy the car made everybody just that slightly more suspicious, right? And it tilted the event, right? Or imagine that had my dad not driven that Mazda Tribute, he used to drive a compact car, right? The Tribute created climate change just enough to make 9/11 a clear, sunny day. We all remember the weather that day, right? Imagine that had he not driven that car, that maybe it would have been more cloudy, there might have been a storm, a hurricane that completely foiled the attempt, right? You can imagine, the probability of that is probably very low, right? Probably 1 in a Google, or even lower, right? But it's probably not 0. And I wish we could calculate what's the probability, right? And but if you think about it, out of all of the world events that happen on a daily basis, there's probably something that triggered something just like what I just described, somewhere happening today, probably, right? Given how many people there are, how many events there are, how many interactions we all have, right? So when I was in 8th grade, I pondered a similar problem. So at the time we had 6 billion people here on Earth, and I wondered if there was somebody who was lucky enough to be matched with the best person they could be matched with, right? So imagine the other 6 billion people in the world. There's probably one person that you are most suited to spend the rest of your life with, right? I wondered what was the probability of somebody marrying that exact right person, right? Not second best, not third best, but the exact right person. I'll let you pause the video to think about how big this subset of people is, right? This elite group of really lucky people. Now here's the thing. For a good number of people, the person is probably the person they see in the mirror, right? It's probably a lot bigger than the LGBTQ community, right? We don't like to think about this group of people, but I would imagine it's when we finally come out of the closet, it could be in the double digits easily, right? Just my own experience from my experiences in daily life, right? I hope Taylor Swift finally comes out of the closet and discovers herself. But aside from that, right? Imagine your best fit is not yourself, and it's somebody out there among the 6 billion people. What's the probability that? Well, it's at least 1 in 6 billion, right? It's probably more, because if you think about it, your best fit is probably going to be somebody who has similar background, whether it be cultural or religious, and you're probably not going to marry the first person you see anyway, right? So it's probably more like 10 in 6 billion rather than 1 in 6 billion, right? But if you think about it, out of the 6 billion people, somebody is probably going to be that lucky one, right? After all, somebody does win the lottery. Of course, the person probably won't know they're the lucky one, right? Most people do marry somebody at least within the top, probably 10%, right? And so you might not be all that much better off than one of those, but you're, in a way, you've won the lottery and you didn't even know that, right? But there's probably a handful of people like that in the world. We don't know who they are. And when I was in 8th grade, that really upset me because it felt it was unfair that some people get to do that, right? Now let's do another thought experiment. What is the probability that you not only marry the best match for you today, but the best match for you that has ever existed on Earth or will ever exist on Earth, right? So I think it's estimated that 100 billion people have ever lived on Earth. And if we assume that we're at the halfway point, which is probably a very generous assumption given what we're doing to ourselves, 200 billion people will ever live on Earth. What's the probability that you marry the best one out of them? I would imagine there's probably a chance that somebody here on Earth is already doing that today, right? Just given how many people are involved, right? But that's okay because at least 10% of us actually do get to marry our best match, right? Especially those who live in a country that's accepting of that way of life, right? Which is basically any country that uses a metric system for their measurements, right? So that's all right by me too. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum.